Sprint 13. Putting and keeping in place the prerequisites for successful change. Startup leaders need to understand and master the specific skills required to align and keep aligned each of the 5 ducks. This sprint goes into detail on the best methods for doing the initial alignment and then for monitoring alignment and for realigning as might be required by unforeseen circumstances. In the following article, we describe how to align and keep aligned your 5 ducks. Putting in place the prerequisites for change. Aligning your 5 ducks. Written and read by Derek Liedau.
This audio is broken up into 3 different chapters. The reason is that this is the longest of all the sprints, and it gets into some detail that you may want to access part of rather than having to listen to it all over again. And so we've broken it up into 3 chapters. All 3 chapters are about putting in place the prerequisites for change, which is ultimately about aligning and keeping aligned all 5 ducks. This is chapter 1, aligning duck 1. Recall that duck 1 comprehension requires that all members of the team responsible for designing and implementing the change must share the same understanding of the change objectives. 2 people can share an objective, but have completely different perspectives on how the objective will be achieved, as well as what will be the consequences of achieving the objective, including what will be their roles in achieving the objective and what will be the consequences of failure. And there will still be other ways people perceive the impact of a change on how they will live their lives and how others will live theirs. Different perceptions on any of these dimensions can cause disaster. If having started working to make a change happen, one or more key people responsible for this change start saying, "That's not what I agreed to make happen." Boom, chaos and looming failure. How do you get all the members of a team to have the exact same understanding of all the objectives of their project? Well, the leader starts by calling a mandatory meeting on the subject and then asking every member of the team to describe in their own words the project objectives. Any project objectives that may be assumed but not specified. What would be the consequences of achieving all the stated and assumed objectives? What might not be okay to happen if the project is successfully completed? How will each team member feel if and when the project is successfully completed? What each person sees as their official role in seeing that the project is successful. What each person sees as their unofficial but important roles in seeing the project is successful. What would be failure? How would failure feel? After letting everyone answer these questions for themselves in their own words in front of everyone else, then the leader gives her, his, or their answers. And then the project leader says, "These are things I heard that make me worry that we might not be totally aligned in how we see this project progressing." After this summary, the leader asks, "What makes you worry that I didn't even mention?" After receiving all this input, the challenge is for the leader to facilitate a discussion where the team agrees to adjust the objectives of the project and any constraints on what they plan to do, so that some or all of the bad things team members worry about are less likely to happen. Document these understandings. The leader then again says what still worries them and asks the team for their remaining worries. The team goes on another round of adjustments to the objectives and the project constraints. Ultimately, the outcome of these discussions should result in every team member feeling that any further aligning will just be counterproductive. They should all feel good about their much deeper shared understandings of what the project is about and how it can and cannot get done. Anyone who is not part of all of these discussions should not be on the team. This alignment is that important. Keeping Duck One aligned. Frequently, unforeseen circumstances create misalignment of Duck 1. For example, somebody can no longer be on the team and the replacement sees things differently. The visualization, planning, or discussion around what it would take to achieve the objectives proves inaccurate. The sponsorship of the team changes and the new sponsor wants changes. A competitor or some outside influence may render some or all of the project objectives worthless. There are other unforeseen things that could go wrong that are outside the control of the team or may have just been initially missed. Everyone on the team should be alert to mutual changes in attitude about where the project is heading. When any of these things happen, or when there is some change in attitudes around the direction, Duck 1 needs to be realigned. The document that the team created describing their Duck 1 alignment can be the starting point. The longer Duck 1 is misaligned, the harder it is to get it back aligned. Misalignment creates frustrations, hidden feelings, and emotions, which can build and boil over. It results in wasted efforts and resources. It causes projects to go off course. Aligning Duck 2. Recall Duck 2 motivation is all members of the team implementing the change must be motivated to see that the change is successfully accomplished. Just because every member of the team agrees upon what are the end objectives, what success and failure would feel like, and what special actions and constraints get agreed to for the project to achieve alignment does not mean every member is motivated to the extent required to make the project successful. Any project will always be just one of many things a team member is motivated to see happen. And it may not be important enough to get the investment of attention, sweat, and dedication to make sure the project is a success no matter what. Because Duck 1 gets aligned first, the leader starts out with important information about what each member will feel if and when the project is a success or a failure. The leader also knows some things each member doesn't want to see happen. These help the leader understand some, but not all, the motivations of each member. To align Duck 2, a leader should hold a series of one-on-one meetings with each member of the team being asked, what do you aspire to get from playing a key role in making this project a success? What other things are you involved in that could get in the way of you doing anything and everything possible to make our startup a success? What can I do to help you have more time or enough time to make this an exciting and rewarding experience? What a leader needs to get beyond with these questions are superficial answers along the lines of, it's my job to do my best for you. You do not want your project to be just about doing a job. As we described in Sprint 11 on motivating others, you want and need people you work with to feel helping you has an important purpose. Here, you need to go beyond just building a sense of purpose to building a strong one-to-one relationship with each member of your project team, with the purpose being this change. These are important people. You want to use your relationship building skills from sprints 8, 9, and 10 to build powerful relationships, as particularly described in Sprint 10 in his blog. Powerful startup relationships require a mix of cooperation, competition, and retreat. With a strong relationship built on many shared objectives, each shared objective is an additional motivation for the teammate to want to see a critical or important project succeed. While you may have a good sense of many of your teammates' work-based motivations, we assume that you talk about them, you may not have a good sense of their motivations to achieve certain things outside of work. It may be none of your business what your teammates do when not at work, but it is important that they have a sense that you care about them being as successful in their private life as in their work life. Keeping Duck 2 aligned. People's circumstances change. Be sensitive to your teammates that seem to struggle with keeping up with their work and deliverables. As soon as you notice a change, ask them what has changed. If they say nothing, well, then press them on what you can do to get them remotivated to achieve at the level that they had been. People's personal lives can be a higher priority than work, and that's okay. But if that is the case, then cooperatively move the person off the project team and bring on somebody with somewhat similar skills who is excited to be part of the team. Of course, then you have to realign Duck 1. Aligning Duck 3. We call Duck 3 skills. The project team must possess or have under their control the skills necessary to design and implement the change. A skill you may recall from Sprint 7 is an ability to perform a prescribed task. What Duck 3 says is for a change to take place or a project to succeed, that the project team must have the ability to deploy people with the necessary skills to do all the tasks that will be required. Ultimately, this Duck requires the project team to visualize as best they can what steps or tasks will be needed to be taken, in what order for the project to be completed. They also need to list the skills of the people that will be assigned to do those tasks or take those steps, and to make a list of skills under the control of the project team and which people have or control those skills. After all, the skill set might be controlled by a contractor or a consultant. There can be no missing skills. For a startup with just a few people, complex tasks like making a detailed CAD drawing may not exist on the team, so the task will require hiring freelance CAD designer or some technician. But put the freelancer's name or the name of the contractor onto the list. If a skill assignment is unfilled, then that adds huge risk for the entire team and project. Small, inexperienced teams, as are typical of many startups, make it easy to miss realizing some of the skills that will be needed. Typical misses include hiring skills. We will soon have a sprint about hiring and firing. Training skills. How do you effectively teach somebody how to do things differently? Communicating to large audience skills, as may be required to align Duck 5. We'll talk about that in the next chapter. It starts with basic communication skills, as we discussed in Sprint 9, but doing it for large, dispersed groups requires additional sub-skills. Bookkeeping. Customer service is in keeping customers happy 24/7. Complex or technical support tasks like CAD drawings. Keeping Duck 3 aligned. People leave, and teams will almost always realize they missed a skill. Duck 3 often gets loose. The leader needs to ask teammates frequently about whether they sense there are missing skills to complete their project. Keeping the list of skills and who has those skills under their control helps in keeping Duck 3 aligned. Aligning Duck 4. We call Duck 4 resources. All the resources required to perform the project must be made available to the team as they are requested. All projects need resources, and resources can take many forms, and some resources can be challenging to find or find enough of. Resources fall into the following categories: monetary, as in money, tokens, donations; energy, as in electricity, power, charged batteries; time, as in, is there enough time for people or equipment to do the actions expected of them? In the case of people, the resource is the time a person promises to dedicate to the project. For equipment, time needs to include setup and perhaps instruction time. Information, as in, what specific data are needed for us to take some required actions. Regulatory, as in, How will third parties be available as and when needed to provide critical permissions to proceed? Space, as in, is there enough space available for people, equipment, and materials? Materials, as in, are there enough materials, particularly specialty materials, on hand? Equipment, in other words, what equipment will be necessary to perform required actions? And finally, contracted support services, like contractors for equipment installation, or maybe for props or signage, or auditors. The project team needs to think through all the resources they'll require to perform all the tasks associated with completing the project. They need to list the resources and where the resources will come from and from whom they will get it. And the people responsible for providing the resource must agree on when and how they will provide what is required. Do not accept casual assurances of support for critical resources. One of the worst things that can happen to a project is for a critical resource to not be available as promised and expected. This destroys momentum and trust and morale, and most projects do not recover from this. Get all resource commitments in writing with the consequences for not providing the resources clearly described. Keeping Duck 4 aligned. Hopefully, all the written commitments will help prevent a critical resource from not appearing or from disappearing when required. If there are people whose commitments you do not trust, put in place a backup or a workaround plan. What's most likely is that a startup team will not know all the resources they will need. Duck 4 gets misaligned when someone realizes a critical resource is missing from the alignment list. The realignment only happens once the team scrambles and finds the resource or figures out a workaround so the resources were not needed as feared. Aligning Duck 5. Recall Duck 5, communication. Everyone impacted by the change must understand its importance. Duck 5 is a tricky one, but it is essential. What you do not want is to put into place all the desired changes only to find that no one actually is doing anything differently. All the effort, money, and resources invested in making the change would be wasted. Yet most businesses report that up to 95% of their improvement projects fail. And the biggest cause of failure is that the change was rejected by those impacted. We repeat what we described in Sprint 12, how to lead change. It is critical to get all the people not on the project team that are impacted by the change to be motivated to embrace the change and not to publicly resist it. This Duck 5 is about the need to align everyone that you want to do things differently than they're used to, and therefore they're going to be naturally resistant to what you want. To them, you must communicate the importance of the change to the organization and its mission, to the people they work alongside within the organization, and to their ability to master their job. The description of the importance of the change is made to appeal to the general human motivations described in Sprint 11 on motivating others. It's also based upon what was discussed in Sprints 8 and 9 on relationship building and communicating. Duck 5 requires that the leader communicates the importance of the change and then receives feedback that the message was accurately received, understood, and agreed upon. Creating a shared understanding of the importance of a change makes it much more difficult for an individual to fight the change in the open or even covertly. If even only a small percentage of employees and stakeholders do not feel the change is important, then it will be poorly implemented, and the potential benefits of the change will be lost. The challenging parts of this alignment are figuring out all the different constituencies, which I'll describe in a second, that will be impacted. This includes constituencies like beta testers and actual customers, investors, contractors, suppliers, and if applicable, people following you on social media. Determining what aspects of the change will worry them or make them feel uncomfortable. And Also, constructing descriptions of the importance of the change in specific terms for each constituency, which speaks to the importance of the change for them as described above. Getting accurate feedback that the importance of the change has been accepted. And composing and delivering updates on how the activities to implement the change are proceeding, specifically highlighting what has and has not changed, including the importance of the expected impacts. All this can require quite a bit of communicating. And some startups figure they do this when they hire a PR firm. But PR firms usually only handle communications to customers or outside constituencies. With Duck 5, internal ones are just as important. In early stage startups, before actually having customers, there are not too many people outside of the leadership team who are impacted. But as startups build capacity to actually deliver products or services to customers, the number of people and constituencies increase rapidly. Aligning and keeping aligned Duck 5 can take up a large amount of time of a founder and the leadership team. The messaging about the importance of a change is only believable if it comes from somebody who is ultimately responsible for ensuring the promised impacts of the change will actually occur. Realigning Duck 5. Consider this as the prescription for how to keep Duck 5 aligned. Compose and deliver updates to each constituency on how the activities to implement the change are proceeding. Specifically highlight what has and has not changed, including a review of the importance of the expected impacts, and ask people what they're worried about. What are constituencies? A constituency is a group of people that share the same benefits, interactions, and expectations associated with dealing with the organization. Constituencies exist inside and outside an organization, and here are some examples that you'll find in a growing startup. People that perform the same job, people who work in the same department, people that work in the same space or geography, people with special benefits like probationary workers, trainees, or alumni. Each user or customer persona is a different customer constituency. Key decision makers at suppliers. And suppliers who compete to supply a specific product or service form a separate constituency. Investors are each class of investor if different types of investors exist. Board of directors, board of advisors. And if the change will impact the families of employees, then employee spouses are a constituency. Clearly, people can be part of several different constituencies. It is important to realize that any of these constituencies can derail the impact of an important change, particularly if not understanding the importance of the change results in covert resistance to its implementation. Invest the time and effort to align Duck 5 and keep it aligned.
Sprint exercise. Now that you've read or listened to our article, Putting in Place the Prerequisites for Change, Aligning Your 5 Ducks, we want you to think about the following questions. Where and how do you see each of these alignments happening? How many constituencies will there be when you get your first customer? What outside help do you think you may need to align the ducks, to provide missing critical skills, or to provide essential resources?